And now something you maybe have never even heard of unless you're a real avid listener to the show, and that's suma root. Suma root, I absolutely love. This ingredient is also known as Brazilian ginseng. It is one of my favorite herbs and probably my favorite herb in this formula. It's a powerful adaptogen, considered very broad spectrum because it helps on the stress side as well as the energy side. But one of the things that I like about it is I think it's a little more high on the energy side for people working at the HPA axis level. What I will tell you is since the 80s, I have seen it work. I've seen it work for me. I've seen it work for other people. It is one of the key, what I would consider magic ingredients in this formula that makes you feel so good when you take it. And I was able to basically triple the potency of it in this formula. And I expect a lot of people to say, holy cow, Jared, I like it even better than I did before. I'm really excited to start hearing that from people, and I really do believe that I will. Welcome to Vitality Radio, the podcast that helps you make sense of natural supplements and thrive without pharma drugs. I'm Jared St. Clair. I grew up in a health food store and spent over 40 years now figuring out what works and what doesn't, so that you can make confident, informed decisions about nutrition, supplements, and your health. Welcome to Vitality Radio. I'm Jared St. Clair. I'm your host each and every week, twice a week, and I'm looking forward to this show for two reasons. One, I've been wanting to bring it to you ever since I decided to reformulate the Ultimate Vitality Multi back in December of 2025. Two, because I want to apologize to you because it's been out of stock for 2 months. Not because of the reformulation. This was not because of that. Otherwise, I would not have done it. I would have waited till the next batch. This was because of U.S. Customs. So I want to apologize for that, and I'll explain what happened briefly because I just think you need to kind of understand. But I'm not going to go into great detail because this show is evergreen. I want it to focus on the multi, not on the out of stock. But I do want to formally apologize. You'll also be seeing me on Instagram and YouTube talking about this as well because I'm so annoyed. It took well over 60 days longer than we anticipated for the multi to come in. We've been out of it for about 2 months, but I ordered it so that we would have it a month before we ran out. And so anyway, it's about a 3-month process, this whole thing. And so I'll tell you that, and then I want to explain to you why the multi is better than it's ever been, why it is the most exciting reformulation I have ever made, and why I cannot wait for you to get your hands on it again because it's going to be amazing. There's one ingredient out of dozens of ingredients in the formula that got held at customs. It got held for over 30 days, and then they rejected it with no reason as to why. Many of you know this because you've called, you've texted, you've hit us up on our chat on vitalitynutrition.com. You've asked on Instagram. All over the place, we've been hearing it, and I've been just as frustrated, probably more so than you, because it's coming at us from every angle, and it's actually costing us money. So obviously not fun to be out of a popular product like this, but also super annoying because I know you love this product if you're already using it, because we heard so much, and this was the one really kind of silver lining to this whole thing. So many people saying, I just don't feel as good without your multi. Is it going to be back? And us making recommendations of other multis and people saying, no, that's not doing the trick. When's the Ultimate Vitality Multi coming back? So anyway, Customs rejected it. The same company sent the same ingredient the same way after that rejection, and it went right through. But that entire process took up almost 2 months that we didn't have, and there was other delays in there as well. But that was the primary one. And that's the U.S. government for you. Maybe it's every government for you. But you might be thinking, well, Customs, where's this ingredient coming from? Is it coming from China? Well, yeah, it is. It came from China. In fact, the only place I can get this ingredient is China, but that's not the only reason I get it from China. Some of my favorite ingredients, including my favorite probiotics, come from China. I talk about this a lot on episode 655. It's linked in the show description where I talk about CGMPs. I talk about NSF. I talked about third-party testing. It's called Behind the Label. Check out that episode. I think it's one of my most valuable episodes for you as a consumer. But what's the deal with China ingredients? Well, it's simple. It's like everything else. You can get really good stuff on Amazon, and you can get the crappiest stuff on earth at Amazon. You can get really good stuff a lot of places and really crappy stuff at the same place. That is the same thing with China, and it's the same thing with America and Mexico and so many other places. We're not buying China. We're buying quality manufacturing with verified testing to make sure that it is what they say it is, at the potency that they say it is, and the quality that they promise. And as long as we have that, and it tests well when we get it for heavy metals and for microbial issues and everything else, I'm happy to take it from China. That's how I do it. When possible, if I can, I get it from America because, frankly, I want to support American industry. But this product, it just makes sense to come from there. And this is the first time that it's ever been held for this ridiculously egregious length of time. So I have to apologize. Sincerely, I am so sorry that it was out for so long. I have taken precautions to try to prevent this in the future. This is a very expensive ingredient. I now have 2 additional barrels of it coming in that we will hold on to and store in cold storage until it's needed again. We are basically becoming the United States, where we have an ingredient reserve in case there's a war in Iran or something like that. But I digress. So we're doing everything that we can to stay on top of it. And I appreciate your loyalty, your sincerity when you tell us we love this product. We're not upset at you because you can't get it. It's in customs. We get it. But we're upset that we can't have it because we love this product. We got so much of that, so much really genuine concern for us, for our family business, and also for yourself because you just don't like being out of it. And that makes me feel really, really good. And it also makes me feel really, really bad that we let you down. So I hope you understand what I'm talking about now. But this is the thing. The reason I'm really excited about this product now, the reason I'm so excited to give you this episode is because this is the reformulated product. It is the best version of the Ultimate Vitality Multi it's ever been. It's been called Ultimate Vitality Multi for over 12 years. It is the first product that I developed and put the Vitality Nutrition brand on, because I've had other formulas on the market for over 20 years, but not under the Vitality Nutrition brand. This is one of my babies, my pride and joy, all that stuff. And I called it Ultimate Vitality Multi when it first came out, not because that was the name I came up with when I was formulating it, but because that is what people told me when they took it, is that they felt more vitality, more energy, better stress response. They just plain felt better when they took it. And so the first 4 or 5 years it was on the market, I didn't tinker with it at all. I stayed the same formula. And then I got some new research on a few things and started realizing, I formulated this in 2012. It needs some updates. So let's update this thing. And so I started updating it. And about once a year or so, I update it now. I think this is the 7th iteration of this formula. And some of these updates are important. The first one, I think, if I remember correctly, it might have been the second one, was when I changed all the, B12 and folate to methylated forms, which they weren't before. Back in 2012, I didn't know how critical that was. I'd never heard of MTHFR back then. Stuff changes, you know what I mean? I bet you had never heard of it either. So now here we are, 13, 14 years later, and about once a year, I look at this formula. I go ingredient by ingredient and try and figure out, how can I improve this product? Do I take this ingredient out? Do I increase the dose? Do I decrease the dose? Do I change the form of the ingredient like I did with B12 and folate, or do I leave it alone? It's kind of a painstaking process, but it's also something I really love to do. So I never complain about it, but it takes time. It took me a few months to get this one figured out, and I am absolutely thrilled because the beginning of the process is that. And then I send off my kind of wish list formula to the manufacturer and say, okay, here are the changes. In this case, there were like 20 changes to this formula. And I know a little bit, roughly what that might do to the price, because I know what the price of these ingredients are to some degree, but I don't have the exact numbers and, dollars and cents that they do. And I hope that I can maintain the price where it was, or make a mild increase that I think is worth it, that I can basically convince you on this show or in the aisle of my store, hey, it's worth the extra couple bucks this time, and here's why. But if it's going to be a crazy increase, then I make adjustments, and, because I have to figure out what's the happy place for people, and what are you willing to actually spend on a great product? And also, what can we actually sell it for and still have these ingredients that we really want in there? So I sent it over to the manufacturer. They sent me back the quote, and I was thrilled. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but it allowed me to keep things in the same price point, not near exactly the same price point as it was. You have a 2-month supply of what I genuinely believe is the best multivitamin in the world that you can take in 3 capsules per day. I do put that little caveat in there because there are multivitamins that have like 9 capsule per day doses, believe it or not. They're going to be more potent than this. Obviously, they're working with a lot more real estate than I am as far as what they can fit into a capsule. But at 3 capsules per day, nothing touches the Ultimate Vitality Multi. And I really believe that. I challenge anybody to bring me their multivitamin and tell me that I'm wrong. Now, let's talk about price for just a minute. $74.99 for a 2-month supply, $44.99 for a 1-month supply. So for about $37 per month, you get this premium multivitamin that is absolutely stacked. Why is it only $37 a month? That might sound expensive to you. I don't know, but compared to other multivitamins on my website, and it's a good value, compared to other multivitamins out there, if you're not comparing it to Costco and Centrum and Amazon fly-by-night companies, it's a good bang for the buck. Just dollar for dollar, day for day, if you don't look closely at the ingredients. But before I did formulations for myself, I did formulations for other companies, a couple of different companies that I formulated for in this industry before I started making Vitality brand products. And I know what their margins have to be in order to pay for their sales team, their marketing budget, their distribution, their brokers, and everything else that they have that goes into their companies. We are still a small, quite literally mom and pop company. My wife and I and my son own this place. Okay. That's the company as far as ownership goes. And we have 3 other family members that work here with us. And we have about 5 or 6 people that are not family members that work here. And that's the company. We don't do massive volume. We're a very small company. And as such, we don't have any of the perks of being a big company when it comes to buying power, volume, decreased prices because we can run 10 million capsules or whatever it is. We run, 100,000 capsules, 200,000 capsules, which a lot of manufacturers won't even do business with us because we don't do enough volume, believe it or not. So it's a challenge. And yet, because that's all we are, that's what Vitality Nutrition is, we are able to take half to a third of the margin percentage that a typical vitamin company in the industry takes. Half to a third. One of the companies that I used to formulate for, a company that I love, that I trust, that makes excellent products that I still sell today, my multivitamin, instead of being $74.99 for a 2-month supply, would be $199 for a 2-month supply. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not sensationalizing. That is the absolute truth. The way their system works, it would sell for $200, $100 a month. And my same product sells for $37.50. So there's an interesting value proposition for you, the consumer, with Vitality Nutrition products. And I don't bring that up enough because I don't like to talk about price. I just like to talk about the quality of the product, why I think it makes sense to you. And then you get to decide, is it a good value? But in this case, I've got to shout it from the rooftops, probably more than I do. This product is a bang for the buck like nothing else in my product line. I've chosen as a flagship multivitamin, part of my Vital 5, that I really want everybody listening to this show to take, to keep the price as low as possible, to make it accessible to as many people as possible. And that's how I've done it, or that's why I've done it. So here we go. I'm going to tell you why it doesn't come in a women's and a men's version, or an over 50 version, or an under 50 version, and all that stuff. I'm going to explain that. And then I'm going to tell you item by item why, what I changed, what I took out, and what I put in, and why, because I want you to understand why it's not just different, but it is truly better. And we'll do that in the next, hopefully 20, 30 minutes, and get this show done for you so that you can move on with your day. Okay, it's a 3 capsule a day product. How did I decide that? Well, if you go back and listen to episode 346, that's the original episode I did all about the Ultimate Vitality Multi. Hilariously, I hadn't talked about it in much detail on my show for 350 episodes almost until then, when I finally said, you know what, more people need to know about this product, because we talk about it in the store all the time, but we're not touting it that much here. And I started talking about it on that show. People started trying it, and it has boomed into our second biggest selling product now after our magnesium product. So go back and listen to that show if you want to understand kind of the philosophy of the product, the history, why it came about. If you're taking the product, I think it'll be really interesting to you. But if you're not sure, if you're on the fence about the product, I think it's a really compelling episode to listen to. So give that a shot. On this episode, I'm not going to focus on the entire product. I'm going to focus on the changes and the adjustments that we made. But originally it was a 6 a day. Now it's a 3 a day. Why? Well, 2 reasons. One, I started at 6 a day because I wanted to deliver a punch. I wanted people to take this product and say, Jared, I freaking love your multivitamin. I feel so good when I take it. Well, what we started having after it was on the market for a little while is people saying exactly that at only taking 3 capsules a day. Because what happened was people are people. None of us want to take more pills than we have to take, including me, the guy that sells pills for a living. All right. So a lot of people just wouldn't take 6 a day, or they'd take 3 in the morning and they'd forget to take 3 in the afternoon. And yet people were loving 3 capsules per day. So eventually, years in, I finally just changed it to a 3 a day. I adjusted the doses to where it made more sense in 3 a day, and I made it a 3 a day. However, it's still a flexible product, and I want you to consider this if you're already taking it or if you decide to buy it this time. Take 3 capsules with breakfast. That's what I recommend, and see how it feels. Do that for a week or two. If you've already been doing it, you already know. And then consider on a day where you're really dragging, or a day like this. For me, it's 7:15 p.m. as I'm recording this episode of the show, 7:15, and I'm feeling pretty good. Well, I took my Ultimate Vitality Multi today. Oftentimes, I will take it again at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon with my meal or a snack or something like that to give me an extra lift of physical and mental energy later in the day. So anywhere from 3 to 6 a day is a great way to do it. I didn't want a mediocre 1 a day. 1 a days are tough. 2 a day could work, but I couldn't put the payload in that I really wanted for people to feel it. So it ended up being a 3 a day. That's how it is. You get the 180 capsules for that 2-month supply if you take 3 a day. So why is this formula different? Well, the biggest difference is what I said about the price, because we have packed into this product a volume of key ingredients in the doses, potencies, and forms that make sense. And I've just simply refused to take the same margin on it as other companies kind of have to do. And even the same margin on it that I do on a lot of my other formulas. With the multi, I'm basically taking a hit, and I'm taking that hit because I want you to try this product, to rely on this product like so many people do, to really be the base of your Vital 5, of your supplement regimen. And I just want to keep it as economical as possible. Now, why is it universal? Why is there not a men's version, a women's version, an over 50, under 50, all that kind of stuff? Well, I talked about how small we are, and we are. If I do 4 formulas instead of 1, the economics don't even work for me. So that's the biggest reason right now, as we grow this company and we market it better, and this podcast gets out there, thanks to you sharing it with your friends, commenting and liking and all that kind of stuff. It will get there. I could probably do one. I'm already working right now on a prenatal. Don't hold me to it. I don't know when it's going to be done, but eventually we will have a prenatal vitamin at Vitality. But I'm not probably going to ever do a women's and a men's and an over 50 and an under 50 and all that kind of stuff, because frankly, in most cases, there's a couple of ingredients that are different. Almost everything else is the same, nearly the same potencies of everything. To a very large degree, it's just marketing. People think they need a personalized formula for women or for men. Well, in reality, I'd like to personalize every formula for the individual that's actually taking the product, but that's not reality. You can't do that. And for the most part, when it comes to nutrients, the key nutrients that are found in multivitamins are pretty universal anyway. So I've chosen not to worry about whether we're doing it under 50, over 50, male or female. Teenagers on up, as long as you're not pregnant or nursing, should be considering Ultimate Vitality Multi. Now let's talk about what actually changed and the economics of payload or size or space, not dollars, but how much can you actually fit into what is called a double aught or a 00 capsule. If you have your pills in front of you, you have me listen to this at the kitchen table or wherever you take your stuff, and you open up your Ultimate Vitality Multi or your Vital 5 Magnesium, you'll see what's called a double aught capsule. That's a little bit fatter than the typical single aught capsule that you might find with your apple cider vinegar or your Back on Track or something like that. A double aught capsule is about as big as most people are comfortable swallowing in a capsule form. So we use that size capsule, and 3 a day. Well, this product was already bursting at the seams, basically. We couldn't fit more in it. So we couldn't make it more potent in terms of just sheer volume or milligrams. So as we're looking through the ingredients, if we want to add something, we have to subtract something else. It's as simple as that. And as I was looking through it, there were a couple of ingredients that were taking up a fair amount of space that I didn't think on a milligram for milligram basis were delivering the value that I wanted them to deliver. And so that's where we made the changes. So one change that actually did take up a little less space and I think makes it a better product. We went from a combination of beta carotene and retinol palmitate, two forms of vitamin A, a plant version and the actual real vitamin A, to just retinol palmitate. Takes up a little less space and I think is actually a superior form of vitamin A anyway. So we made that adjustment. Back in the day, 2012, I was convinced that beta carotene was actually a better option. I'm no longer convinced of that, and I've decided to get away from it, and simple as that. Also, in 2012, we had iPhones, not all of us, but there weren't iPads really, and most of us weren't going from iPhone to iPad to 27-inch monitor to 75-inch TV and everything in between. And 80% of the lights overhead were not LED. They were mostly incandescent back then or fluorescent. Not that fluorescent bulbs are good for you, but they're actually easier on the eyes, less blue light. And blue light's been a concern for a lot of people, including me, because I stare at a screen a lot, and I know you probably do as well. And so I wanted eye support. But when I first looked at doing this years ago, and I looked at these companies like Centrum that were doing this stupid stuff, like putting 0.5 milligram of lutein in their product and saying, no, with lutein, when the studies clearly show 10 milligrams or more lutein is what's optimal. I just wasn't going to play that game. But as I was digging through and looking at these ingredients, I realized that I could make this work. And so we decided to do this. There's a study called AREDS 2 by the National Eye Institute, and it ran throughout the 2010s. And what they found is that lutein and zeaxanthin at precisely the 10 milligrams and 2 milligram ratio in adults that we have now included in the Ultimate Vitality Multi reduced the risk significantly of age-related vision decline. And a follow-up report on the same group of participants about 10 years later, I guess it was, and that reinforced the original findings that consistent daily use of 10 milligrams of lutein and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin makes the needle move when it comes to your ocular health. But there's even a newer bit of research that I found in 2025 as I was just starting to reformulate this product. A placebo-controlled randomized trial conducted in Australia gave healthy adults 10 milligrams of lutein and 2 milligrams of zeaxanthin combination daily for 6 months. And compared to the placebo group, the supplemented group showed meaningful improvements on objective measures, including tear film stability and how quickly their eyes recovered function after a burst of bright light exposure. So the mechanism is, in plain terms, is this. Lutein and zeaxanthin are the two carotenoids your eye specifically concentrates in a region called the macula, and they function almost like a built-in pair of sunglasses, filtering out high-energy blue light before it can stress the retina and contribute to that end-of-day eye fatigue so many of you have described to me over the years. And back when this formula was first built, I genuinely wasn't thinking about blue light exposure. And these ingredients were significantly more expensive then than they are now. Now we can put high quality versions in at the studied dose without raising the price of the multi. And I am pumped about that. I made a similar kind of trade with resveratrol. Sounds great on the label, powerful antioxidant, but there wasn't much in there. Enough that I thought it was at least supportive, but not enough to probably make the needle move like what we're talking about with lutein and zeaxanthin. And it's an expensive ingredient. So I thought, okay, so what can I do that'll be better than resveratrol at those doses? I looked at lycopene the same way, exact same thing. Another expensive ingredient, good ingredient. I like it. And I had a good dose in there, but is there a better option? And I decided that between lutein and zeaxanthin and coenzyme Q10 and PQQ, that we were going to deliver a much, much better product to you. So we have 30 milligrams of CoQ10 and 10 milligrams of PQQ in the formula. And you have to approach every ingredient differently. And with the multivitamin, when I'm looking at it, when I was looking at it, I'm looking at things and saying, okay, what are some of the biggest issues that people are dealing with now? The eye health issue was big. Cardiovascular issues are huge. Everybody needs to reduce oxidative stress. So all of that stuff is really, really critical. The question is, how do we do it with only a few milligrams? So we have to then look for ingredients that don't require much to still deliver benefit. And CoQ10 and PQQ are a perfect example of that, and a perfect example of what happens with the synergy of ingredients, because there are studies on CoQ10 that specifically show that when it is combined with potassium, magnesium, B12, folate, and niacin, even small doses of CoQ10 over a 6-week trial showed significant improvements in heart function and insulin markers. Now, normally if I'm recommending CoQ10, I'm recommending 100 milligrams, 200 milligrams, sometimes even more. But that's CoQ10 as a standalone ingredient. We now know that there are studies showing CoQ10 in significantly lower doses when combined with other ingredients that essentially act as cofactors or synergy factors, you may call them, works at lower doses and still delivers a punch. And here's what I think is so cool about this, because many people are taking CoQ10 on its own. Many people are taking lutein and zeaxanthin on their own. And you can continue to take those if you want. You maybe take a little lower dose if you want, because they're in the multi now. But most people aren't taking those ingredients. And you are listening to the show and you're thinking to yourself, probably, I already take a lot of supplements. I don't want to add more supplements. Well, then how about if we put in enough of some of these key supplements that is probably covering the bases for you, giving you daily support without breaking the bank, because it didn't increase the price at all, and without having to add another pill to the pile. And that's what we shot for. So 30 milligrams of CoQ10 and 10 milligrams of PQQ have shown significant benefit. PQQ primarily being at the mitochondrial level, well, CoQ10 as well, and CoQ10 for cardiovascular benefit as well. PQQ's specific job is supporting the creation of brand new mitochondria, essentially helping your body build new cellular power plants rather than only maintaining the ones that you already have. CoQ10 sits directly inside the machinery of those mitochondria, existing and new, and helps them actually produce usable cellular energy once they are built. So we have this powerhouse pairing, and it's even more powerful when combined with the other ingredients in the formula. The next thing that I did is increase alpha-lipoic acid, one of my favorite antioxidants for so many reasons. It supports liver function. It supports blood sugar balance. It's fantastic for people that deal with any kind of metabolic syndrome, insulin sensitivity issues, or excess weight, people that struggle with liver detoxification, all those things. And it's really good for the central nervous system as well. And we were able to double that dose. Again, at a supportive dose, 50 milligrams. It used to be 25. So not a massive quantity of alpha-lipoic acid. But if you're not already taking alpha-lipoic acid, having a little extra in there, I think is a very, very valuable tool. And now something you maybe have never even heard of unless you're a real avid listener to the show, and that's suma root. Suma root, I absolutely love. This ingredient is also known as Brazilian ginseng. It is one of my favorite herbs and probably my favorite herb in this formula. I first discovered suma back in 1980-ish, very early in my career when I was still a boy is when it first hit. That's probably mid-80s, something like that when I was a teenager. And for a while, it was pretty hot and it kind of died off here. But in Brazil, it is huge, and it is an herb that I absolutely love. It's a powerful adaptogen, considered very broad spectrum because it helps on the stress side as well as the energy side. But one of the things that I like about it is I think it's a little more high on the energy side for people working at the HPA axis level. But here's something else worth noting about how I do my formulations and when we're trying to work again within the amount of space that we actually have in the capsule. One thing that you can do is increase the concentration of an herb. So I moved suma from just suma root extract to a 10-to-1 concentrated extract. That matters because the milligrams I was able actually to reduce a little bit, but the potency went way up because at 125 milligrams that's in there now, it's the equivalent of 1,250 milligrams of raw suma, which is about triple what it used to be. So we're triple the suma potency. And that actually even saved us a little bit of money, which helped to offset some of the increase in price from the lutein and some of the other stuff. So there aren't really strong scientific studies on suma. There are some, but they're not big. They're not, thousands of people. They're not even necessarily placebo controlled. So the research is thin, frankly. However, just because there's not a large, well-designed human trial on an herb does not mean that it doesn't work. In fact, There was a time when ashwagandha didn't have a single trial on it. There were a time when green tea, we didn't know what green tea did. It was just popular in Japan and was a staple, but we didn't know why it was good. There was no studies on rhodiola. I remember when echinacea first came out on the market, and elderberry. There weren't studies on any of these things, or very, very few. Well, that's kind of where Suma finds itself. I don't know if it'll ever get those studies. I don't know if there's a financial reason for anybody to put money into those studies. But what I will tell you is since the 80s, I have seen it work. I've seen it work for me. I've seen it work for other people. It is one of the key, what I would consider magic ingredients in this formula that makes you feel so good when you take it. And I was able to basically triple the potency of it in this formula. And I expect a lot of people to say, holy cow, Jared, I like it even better than I did before. I'm really excited to start hearing that from people. And I really do believe that I will. So this is how I look at it with herbs that don't have big science on them. I look at traditional use. How long has it been used in the culture or the area where it's big? Brazilian ginseng, Suma has been used for hundreds, if not thousands of years over there. And why is it used? And what do they say about it in their tradition? And then what do I see when I sell it to my customers? How do I feel when I take it myself? What happens when I combine it with other adaptogens? And what do we see when people utilize it on a regular basis? And Suma, I'm telling you, is a superstar that just almost nobody knows about. It's one of the ingredients that's in this formula that does nothing for me on the label. I put Suma on the product. People skip right by it. They don't even notice it. They don't even care. And in some cases, they might look at it and say, why do I want to take that? But it's worth that because I think it packs a punch that most people don't even realize they're getting from Suma. What else did I change? I increased the chromium by double. 250 micrograms was the old dose, now 500 micrograms. When you look at chromium, you look at the old research, it's mostly down on 200 micrograms. I talked a lot about this during my GLP-1 episodes, so I won't belabor the point. But I believe this. In the clinical trials, it's very simple. Chromium is really great for people with metabolic syndrome, insulin sensitivity issues, insulin resistance, excess weight, or diabetes. Like, it's unquestioned how effective chromium is in that group. In most other people, which I think unfortunately might be the minority of Americans at this point that aren't dealing with one of those things or a combination of those things, chromium doesn't move the needle that much. People don't necessarily do a lot better with weight or things like that if they're not already dealing with one of those things. However, I do believe that chromium at that dose, 500 micrograms, half a milligram is all, which is another great one because I can squeeze it in without taking up any space at all. And it doesn't raise the price much because chromium is very inexpensive. It just made sense to make the bump. And so I did. And I believe that most people are actually going to have more of a preventative maintenance effect with this higher dose of chromium if they're not dealing with one of those things. But if you are dealing with metabolic syndrome, if you are dealing with insulin resistance, if you are dealing with stubborn weight, if you are dealing with sugar cravings and all these things, 500 micrograms of chromium is way better than 250 micrograms of chromium in the clinical research. And so it just made sense to make that change. Not only that, but I also added vanadium to it. And vanadium works hand in hand, kind of downstream from chromium. And back in the day, when chromium was first on the market, they were recommending 200 micrograms, and a lot of research was done on 200 micrograms. But we now know that 500, 1,000, even 1,500 micrograms a day is a better dose for people in those areas of need when it comes to metabolic support. So what I decided to do is get to the 500 because half the people taking this multi probably don't need the extra chromium, but it won't hurt you to have it, and it doesn't hurt the price of the product. And the other half of the people really will benefit from this extra chromium, but would also then benefit from adding additional chromium, 500 to 1,000 micrograms, or the GLP-1 metabolic optimizer, which has 1,000 micrograms per dose in that product. So that's why chromium came up, and that's why I increased it that way. Oh, and I have to tell you about this with chromium too. So this research matters. This is a meta-analysis pooling 41 different studies on chromium among people with type 2 diabetes. Chromium supplementation improved HbA1c, hemoglobin A1c, by an average of 0.6%. Now that sounds really, really low. That doesn't seem like a big number, but that is huge because 0.6% in blood sugar management is similar to the same neighborhood as some prescription drugs for A1C, like metformin. It's a big deal. And if you're thinking 0.6%, what the heck does that mean? Well, let's just say that your A1C is at 5.6. Well, that 0.6% brings it to 5. It's a big number difference. So what else did I change? Better blood sugar and metabolic support. 4 changes in this category. Chromium doubled from 250 micrograms to 500 micrograms, and I'll explain why in just a minute. Vanadium, brand new to the formula. I'll explain that one as well. Manganese doubled from 1 milligram up to 2 milligrams, and another brand new ingredient, molybdenum, is now in the multi. Probably should have been in there sooner, but it's in there now at 150 micrograms. Let me take you through these one at a time, and I think chromium deserves extra credit, and so I'm going to spend a little more time on it. Chromium supports the way insulin interacts with your cells, essentially helping insulin bind and do its job more efficiently. Think insulin resistance. Chromium helps with that type of issue. So your body can actually move glucose out of the bloodstream and into the cells where it actually is needed. 12 years ago, when I first built this formula, this wasn't the priority that it is today. It was getting there. And actually, I think it's been 14 years since I built the formula. That wasn't as big of a priority, but my gosh, the numbers have skyrocketed. The CDC's most recent data puts prediabetes at more than 40% of American adults, and roughly 1 in 3 adults now meets the clinical definition of metabolic syndrome. Whatever your blood sugar looks like right now, the odds that this matters to you or to someone you love are higher today than they've ever been since before I started formulating this product. And here's the part that I want every one of you to hear. Whether this applies to you directly or not, these ingredients aren't going to work against you if your blood sugar is already healthy. At worst, they're simply supporting a system that already is working well. At best, given how common these issues have become today, they may play a role in helping keep it that way. Now, if you look at chromium research across the entire population, healthy people included, the results are genuinely kind of mixed. And I'm not going to pretend that they're not, but that doesn't really matter, because the part that matters is that when you look at just the people that need chromium, that have insulin resistance, that have syndrome, that have excess weight, that have issues with diabetes, prediabetes, high A1C, all of that stuff, that's where chromium shines. A meta-analysis that took 41 separate studies found that among people with type 2 diabetes specifically, chromium supplementation improved hemoglobin A1C by an average of 0.6% and lowered fasting glucose meaningfully too, with no benefits showing up in people who didn't have diabetes to begin with. So it didn't help those people, didn't hurt those people, may have been a preventative measure. We don't know for sure, but it worked great for the people that need it. Now, 0.6% doesn't sound like much, but in blood sugar management, that is a meaningful number. That's in the same neighborhood of what some prescription approaches like metformin are able to achieve. And clinically, even a half-point movement in A1C is considered significant enough to matter for long-term health outcomes. That's a real result. A separate clinical trial published in 2010 found something I think is genuinely important. Chromium didn't help everyone equally, but the people who did respond were specifically the ones who came in with the lowest insulin sensitivity and the highest blood sugar to begin with. In other words, chromium isn't a blunt instrument that does the same thing for everybody. It appears to work hardest exactly in the people who need it the most. That's exactly why I landed on 500 micrograms in this formula. Most multis on the market either leave chromium out entirely because it's not a required nutrient by the federal government, or they put in a small dose or maybe even up to 200 micrograms. 500 micrograms is almost unheard of in a multivitamin. I didn't put it in there, honestly, originally, not because I didn't think it should be in there, but because I was concerned people would think it was too much, that it would actually dissuade people from buying the product. But now I just wanted to be the best product at the best dose. And 500 micrograms of chromium takes up almost no space. It makes almost no cost difference. And it makes all the difference for people that are dealing with A1C issues, that are dealing with blood sugar issues, that are dealing with metabolic syndrome and all the other stuff. So I decided at 500 micrograms because I think it's the right dose for everybody, preventative maintenance for people that don't need it right now, and actual number mover, needle mover for people who do. But for people who also deal with significant issues in the metabolic syndrome area, in the insulin sensitivity area, and all of that, we have the GLP-1 metabolic optimizer, which has 1,000 micrograms of chromium. And that is the sweet spot for me. 1,000 plus 500 micrograms. That's where we want the two. It's a great pairing. It's what I take. It's what my wife takes. And we absolutely love that combination. We also added vanadium. I mentioned that in the form of vanadium sulfate. Added it specifically because it complements chromium rather than duplicating it. Vanadium works through a completely different mechanism. Researchers call it an insulin mimetic, meaning it can directly nudge some of the same cellular pathways that insulin itself normally activates, essentially working downstream closer to the cell's actual response. Chromium, by contrast, works further upstream, helping the insulin receptor itself respond more efficiently in the first place. So you've got one mineral supporting the receptor's sensitivity and a second mineral supporting the pathway on the other side of that receptor. That's a genuinely complementary pairing, and that's why I decided to go ahead and add vanadium this time as well. A recent study using vanadium at a similarly modest dose to what's in the multi showed measurable improvements in fasting blood sugar and A1C over a 12-week period. And that's just vanadium, not with chromium. So imagine what they can do together. Molybdenum may be a trace mineral, and it may be one you've never even heard of, but it's essential for enzymes involved in sulfur metabolism in the body's natural detoxification pathways, including the breakdown of sulfites, the same compounds found in wine and dried fruit that some people react to. I added 150 micrograms because it works synergistically with nutrients already in this formula, like alpha-lipoic acid, broccoli extract to support healthy liver function, and efficient cellular metabolism. And manganese, also an often overlooked mineral, but it's essentially to help with healthy bone formation, connective tissue, and your body's primary mitochondrial antioxidant enzyme. We were supporting mitochondria, I already talked about with CoQ10 and PQQ, but we're also supporting it here and decided to double the dose to 2 milligrams because that's what the science really supports. And it just simply made sense to do it. So now we're doing even better on the detoxification side because of that. And then overall, we really put a heavy focus on detoxification with this product, which sounds weird for a multivitamin. I know, but my gosh, how many episodes of this show or Carlin's show or Carlin's Instagram, if you're a Just Ingredients fan, do you have to see to recognize that we are under an onslaught of toxicity on a regular basis? So if you're going to take a daily supplement to enhance your health, like a multivitamin, why not also enhance your detox pathways so that everything else is working as well as it should? So I pulled the small dose of spirulina and a small dose of red clover out of the formula, and in their place, I built up dandelion root, burdock root, and broccoli extract. In fact, we didn't have broccoli extract in there at all. Dandelion root was quadrupled in potency. Burdock was doubled, and the broccoli extract has a very specific sulforaphane content that was not in the formula before. And so really excited about that because there's a reason. Dandelion and burdock both carry a long history of traditional use, specifically supporting healthy liver and kidney function tied to your body's own natural detoxification pathways. Sulforaphane, the compound concentrated in the broccoli sprout extracts, is one of the most well-studied natural activators of what researchers call your phase 2 liver detoxification enzymes, which is the pathway your liver relies on to package up compounds and prepare them for elimination from the body. A randomized clinical trial led by researchers at Johns Hopkins studied one of the more heavily polluted regions of China and published in 2014 gave several hundred participants a daily broccoli sprout beverage over a 12-week period and tracked their urinary excretion of several common airborne pollutants throughout the day. The group receiving the broccoli sprout compound showed a rapid and sustained increase in how efficiently their bodies cleared those compounds, an effect that showed up in the very first day of the study. Between what the research shows specifically on sulforaphane from broccoli and the depth of traditional use of dandelion and burdock, I felt strongly that this 3-ingredient combo does considerably more daily work than what I had in there before. And then let's talk about the forms really quickly of what we have in here, because I don't talk about it a lot in this episode. It's more in episode 346, but all of the B vitamins are in their cellular active form, either methylated or somehow other enhanced like P5P or R5P, because my lovely wife, my best friend in the whole wide world, Jen, is an MTHFR person. She's dealing with these mutations that many of you are dealing with. It only makes sense to make sure that all of us are absorbing these nutrients more efficiently, not just people with MTHFR, but even the people that don't have it, because it's still more bioavailable. Also, we have this really annoying thing called the FDA. I don't know if you've heard of them. They're supposedly protecting our health, but mostly they're just a menace. But here's one of the things they do that drives me crazy. And I get why they do it, but they could do it so much better. Kind of like the customs office. But again, here we are with the government. So we have a form of vitamin B1, my favorite form, called benfotiamine. Benfotiamine is not considered B1 by the FDA. It is B1, scientifically speaking, but it's not considered B1. So it can't be at the top of the label in the supplement facts panel as B1. And I had it there. I was unknowingly actually mislabeling my product. I did not understand that correctly until I sought some legal guidance on it and recognized that was the case. So in this formula, I added 25 milligrams of thiamine, which is a less efficient form, but still a very good form of vitamin B1. I didn't put any crap in there. It's a water-soluble form. And now you have 25 milligrams of B1 on top and 50 milligrams of benfotiamine underneath the supplement facts panel for a total of 75 milligrams of B1. And the reason for that is I have seen such a need for nerve health support. And benfotiamine, being the fat-soluble form of B1, is the one that crosses into nerve tissue far more efficiently than standard water-soluble thiamine does. But by having the combination, we're able to claim it on the label the way that we need to for people looking for B1, which is fine, but also still give the benfotiamine what it needs. And neither of them in a token dose. So many products, because of this issue, have 1 milligram of benfotiamine, so it's on the label, but they're not claiming it in the supplement facts panel. They're just unfortunately window dressing it. And well, I'm just not a fan of that. So those are all of the changes that we made. I know that it is a lot, and I hope that you stuck with me up to this point. But I talked about holding the line on price, and so I won't belabor that point. It's the same price that it was. It's way better. It's way more comprehensive. I am so excited to deliver the Ultimate Vitality Multi, and all I want to do is ask you one little favor and give you a thank you. If you're already taking the multi, again, thank you for your patience. Please try it again, and please love it more than you ever have before. And if you've not done this, I would really appreciate you leaving a review on our website, vitalitynutrition.com. Leaving a review under this episode on our YouTube channel would be fantastic, or even a comment on the Shopify app is great as well. Anywhere that you can do that stuff for us is really, really beneficial. If you love what Vitality Radio provides, which I know a lot of you do because I hear it all the time, and I'm so grateful for that, and you love the formulas that we develop here at Vitality Nutrition, and you really believe in them, and I know that many of you do, please help us spread the word. We need your support. We are a little company trying to do big things, and one of the best ways, the best way that I can see to do that is for people like you to share this information with people you love so that they can get the results that you've experienced with things like Back on Track, GLP Metabolic Optimizer, Ultimate Vitality Multi, our Vital 5 Magnesium, and so on and so on and so on. I'm so grateful for you, my listeners. I'm so grateful for you, my customers, and the people that support our company and allow me to do what I love for a living, which is just such a cool thing. Thank you so much for all that you do for us at Vitality Nutrition. If you have questions, call us 801-292-6662. That's 801-292-6662. Jump online, vitalitynutrition.com, and go spread the word. Let's tell more people about what we're doing here at Vitality and get more people the help that they need. I'm Jared St. Clair, and this has been Vitality Radio. Thanks for listening to the Vitality Radio podcast. If this episode helped you, follow the show, share it with someone, and explore trusted education and resources at vitalitynutrition.com. See you next time.
Hello, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Vitality Radio. Just a reminder that this podcast is for educational purposes only. This podcast has not been evaluated by the FDA. This podcast is provided with the understanding that the information shared is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. This podcast is not a substitute for professional care by a medical professional. Thank you.